Hello, good night, good evening to everyone all over the world. We have more than 10 countries watching us, so whatever the time zone, be welcome. I will be talking to you in this webinar part of the Castlethon about minimum viable product and the importance of experimentation. And that is the big topic about MVP. My name is Vera Ferro Lebres, and I talk to you from Portugal. I work on IPB as Entrepreneurship Office Head. So I will start by letting you know what we will be addressing during this presentation, and we will start with the definition of the MVP, minimum viable product, and then we will talk a bit why you should do it, how you should do it, what should it include, and also some examples that may be very useful for you in this phase that you will be testing a minimum viable product. So what is this of a minimum viable product about? This is a method that it's used mainly in entrepreneurship. All startups started with an MVP, and it's used to validate a new or a renewed product or service. And it has just enough features to satisfy the early adopters. And usually we do not do an MVP with a final product, but with an initial version. But this initial version is good enough that allows us to fake it until we make it. So we know how to fake that the product or the service is already a market-ready version. But in reality, during this MVP, we will be gathering feedback from these early adopters so that when we are developing and investing more time and money, our product or service to be finalized will consider this feedback. So this MVP version should be good enough to look professional and demonstrate convincingly the benefits that the user will gather from buying or using your service or your product. It should be very clearly for them that they will solve a problem or it will add value to their daily lives. When they buy something, this something they are buying should look already market ready, and it should be very clear the added value. And during the MVP testing phase, you should be careful enough to include a feedback tool for future development. So try to plan in advance for this, and I will give you in a minute some advice on how to do it. So why do we do this, the MVP? I have given already some inputs on this, but we do it because we want to start markets testing, and this is a very important tool to do it. We want to validate our ideas, either the product itself or some features that we added after the prototype phase. So MVP is an improved prototype that we will test with users or clients. It's used to save time and money, and it's also the final moment that will allow us to do the decision if it's worth investing or not in having a final version. So all the focus is in the user or client and how they look for the solution and how they look to your product and how it should fix a problem or a need for them. So do they value all the different features that you included on your product? Is that something they are worth paying for? Do they agree on the pricing tag that you put in your product? Are they willing to pay that? How do they react to your marketing and branding strategies? Which selling channels are they buying more from? You can test different selling channels. You can try to go online or maybe to an old store shelf and try to understand how the different clients and the different targets react and how much they are willing to pay. This is a phase of validating your market strategy. So how does your product compare to competitors? in the moment of decision, what does the client do? How does the client react to the features that distinguish your product from the others on the market to solve the same problem or the same need? How will you solve some problems in terms of logistics or shelf time? And this shelf time is an expression usually used to some products like food products, but can also be considered like the lifetime of a virtual product or a digital product. How does the market react to your packaging, either in terms of marketing and branding, but also in terms of logistics and in terms of exposing the product to the final client? And also, you estimated some costs after product production for all the other costs involved, like the marketing, the logistics, the transportation, and also the seller that you need to have. How does your MVP validate all these costs that you estimated? And this should be a solution for you, very budget friendly. So you do it to save money. That is one of the main reasons why we do an MVP. So how will it save money for you? More importantly, because you will have the product that the client wants, and you will not include unnecessary features that the client is not willing to pay extra for, and that may add unnecessary costs. And then you also have here an opportunity to validate your estimation of your client acquisition cost. And this is very important because on the market phase of your product, you will already have a very real-based estimate to budget your market entrance. And always believe on yourself. You can fake it. So use the most inexpensive tool so that you can validate everything without expending unnecessary money, also on the MVP itself. So how do we do it? We start by building something that it's an improved version of your prototype, that includes also the communication, branding, and selling adds to the prototype, and that allows you to target to have a product or a service that convinces the user that he is buying a complete product. And you may be thinking, I can't do it, that is not possible, but I will show you some very low cost, I would say zero cost versions that were very interesting and that allowed some well-known brands to do their MVP. And after building, you measure. And that is something that you need to plan in advance. So you need to measure your success rate based on your MVP. So how many reach the product, how many different users found your product on your selling channels, how many were analyzing your product, but they dropped off and they decided not to buy, and why. You need to gather that information, and how many did indeed buy your product after contacting, and how many of them are willing to recommend your product or buy a second time. So this is also two very simple questions or data that are very easy to gather, and that they may give you a lot of information. And then, of course, open feedback is always a good strategy to gather information that you didn't anticipate that the users would give to you. And out of this, you learn. And because you learn, you go back to your product or service in the phase that you have it, and you iterate. That means that you will fix what your client said it was not so good, and you improve everything that can be improved in order for you to have a complete and well-packaged, very nice products to go to the market. If you, in this phase of iterating again, do a lot of changes and you're not confident that this new version is market ready, you can retest and redesign and go back again in this circle and test it again with the clients or users. So what can you include here? What I usually say is that we always start with the why, so with the purpose. What do we want from the MVP? And we try to write that down on a matrix. So ask yourself, why do you need an MVP? Why is it important for you? What are your doubts or questions about your product and your stage and your features and the decisions you have made? And what do you need to solve? What are the black boxes you have or the question marks that are still on your mind map? And transform all of those questions in a method that can give you data to validate and to answer these questions and doubts. Then think about the product or process or service. List all the features it has and think about your product on how it distinguishes from the current offer in the market to solve the same problem or the same need. And I know that most frequently you think there is no competition for my product, but that is never the situation. There's always an alternative. And if you can't find a product one, always think, what are people doing when they feel this need? And that may be a very non-tech, non-developed solution. But you should compare to that one also. And then think on how you will prioritize or depend from one point to the other to gather the data. So is it the case that your product has some features that may be limited because they depend on others, and maybe your user will not see, for example, all the colors of the product if they do not select that? May be the case that they will not understand that you have a very artificial intelligent algorithm embedded in your product because that is not clearly spoken. So try to understand on the perspective of the user if some features are limited because they depend on the others, how important are those for you, and do this mind map or storytelling, trying to anticipate what the user will do to guarantee that for most of the users, you will gather the most important data for yourself to progress. And then go back and build something very professional. If you want to gather real data that are not only from friends and family, you go to the market and you gather information from real users or buyers. You need to build something that it's fake, of course, but very professional, and that allows you to gather real information and to call attention of those that find you on wherever you are. And then think about the feedback. Feedback is one of the most important features of the MVP. How will you monitor the behavior of the user when buying your product? How will you go deeper in the user experience with the product after the decision made, when they contact with the other more advanced characteristics? Try to plan in advance. Gather, for example, contacts of your users or buyers in order to send them, for example, a very short form, survey or questionnaire later to gather their feedback on, for example, those two very simple questions that I asked if they would buy a second time or recommend your product or service to friends. And then let's think about some very concrete suggestions. Where should you go to test your MVP? And I have here some examples of what you can do depending on the type of MVP and the type of product you have. You can use Google AdWords on your benefit. So you can check if the clients, when using some AdWords to search for something Do they find your product? Use the correct AdWords to promote it, and try to understand if the product is interesting for consumers in the region you are trying to sell it. If no one is searching online for a solution, is it the case that your product will be maybe promoted offline? So let's do that. Or is it the case that it's not just interesting enough yet and no one is searching for that solution? And in that case, you may want to use other channels to do your MVP. For example, you can use interviews directly with users. And in that situation, remember, they are interviews, not debates. So you ask, you show, you listen, but you don't debate with the users. Don't let them know you are the creator. We know you love your solution and we are happy that it is so, but the users that you are interviewing should be strangers and should not understand that you are in love with that solution. Otherwise, they will not give you an honest feedback and will not have the opportunity to improve. If you have a product that it's a digital or virtual channel of selling, there are some stores, e-commerce, social media stores, app stores that allow you to do something that it's very interesting, that is to do a pre-registering for a pre-order, even if the product is not ready yet. And you can check the box that the product is not ready before a specific date. So this means that the clients like your product so much, then when they see it and they know it's not ready, they are willing to do a pre-order that they pay right away, and they will wait a significant amount of time to receive it in their house. And this means that you will receive potential clients' money before you do the final investment on your product to have the final version, because now you are confident enough to refine the product and put it in the market with a very low risk. And then there may be the situation where you are in a decision gate. You can either select A or B options, and you want the help of the user to make such a decision. And this means you can test different pricings, different channels, different features, and combine different MVPs to make a final decision comparing the data. This is a situation that most often is done with groups of teams of people developing products, and each member of the team is testing one different version or one different feature. And then we have the most complex one that takes longer, and we do not believe you will do it during the hackathon. It's the crowdfunding. So crowdfunding is similar to the pre-order version, but it's done in platforms that also have usually a social role, and that also allows the brands to launch themselves to the market already with these communities of early adopters that are always very interesting to put the word out there, because they are micro-influencers in their areas. And based on this, because we want you to have some very good examples, I will share a very short video that allows you to see 3 very different examples of MVPs of 3 very well-known brands. So Dropbox is a global brand. I believe everyone knows it. It's a cloud sharing system, that it's a private one, and that it's one of the first ones. Zappos is an online shoe store. It was one of the first stores selling shoes online on a period where everyone thought selling shoes online was craziness. And then we have Buffer, a service that it's sold online. And you will see very different options of MVP. So after the commercial.
What are the greatest minimum viable products of all time? Absolutely no idea, but here are 3 of my favorites. Hi, this is Gary. Welcome to Development That Pays. Today, we're going to take a look at 3 of my favorite examples of minimum viable products. Before diving in, let's establish some ground rules for a proper MVP. It's got to be minimal, it's got to be viable, and it's got to be actually, no, it doesn't have to be a product. I'll be showing you a great example of a non-product in a minute or two. It has been argued that the word product in MVP is unhelpful. Steve Cohen has made a strong case for using the word experiment instead, and I have to say I agree. But for now, let's stick with the P and temporarily redefine it to premeditated, meaning that the MVP must be a deliberate attempt to learn about the market. This rules out cases that look like MVPs in retrospect, but were really full products that just happened, to everyone's surprise, developing into something big. Let's get going, starting at number 3, it's Buffer. Buffer is an application that makes it easy to share content on social media. Way back in the beginning, they put these 2 pages on their website. It's a test, certainly, but at this point, not quite an MVP. The next version was better. They slotted this page in between the other 2 pages. Now visitors to the website are not just saying, this is interesting, they're saying, I want to buy this. In fact, there was nowhere for anyone to input credit card details or payment details of any kind, but anyone who got this far was at least prepared to think about parting with their money. As co-founder Joel Gascoigne said, after this result, I didn't hesitate to start building the first minimal version of the real functioning product. Minimal, yep. Viable, yep. Premeditated, yes, definitely. This was definitely an experiment. Buffer has gone on from this MVP to do really quite well. Its current valuation is something close to $400 million. Moving on to number 2 is Dropbox. Dropbox, as I'm sure you know, is a file synchronization service. Edit a file on your desktop, and seconds later, it's updated on all of your other devices. Rewind to the very early days of Dropbox. The team, entirely composed of techie types, had the basic synchronization working. That was the easy bit. The hard bit was going to be to achieve the same trick on every platform: Mac, Windows, Android, iPhone, etc., etc. Given that the team was all technical types, you'd have put your money on them diving straight in. Drew Houston, the CEO, did something surprising. He made a video. The video, just 3 minutes long, demonstrated the sync process end to end. But it was more than just a simple demo. It was full of techie in-jokes designed to appeal to early adopters.
Where you'll see that not only are the changes for my Mac already here, but if I make
and it worked like a charm. In Drew's words, it drove hundreds of thousands of people to the website. Our beta waiting list went from 5,000 people to 75,000 people literally overnight. It totally blew us away. Minimal, yes. Viable. Well, it wasn't a product that could be used, but there certainly was a product that could be demonstrated. Premeditated? Yep, definitely an experiment. Dropbox also went on to do quite well. Its current valuation stands somewhere between $5 and $10 billion. It's time for my number 1 pick. It's Zappos. It's 1999. Co-founder Nick Swinmurn, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, wanted to build an online store for shoes. But would people use it? Here's how he went about finding out. He popped down to his local shoe stores. He went into each of the stores, and I shit you not, he photographed pairs of shoes. The photographs were uploaded to a super simple website. If someone clicked on a button to buy a pair, they could pop down to the store where he took the photo and buy the shoes. What I love about this one is that behind the scenes, there's pretty well zero infrastructure, almost zero inventory. And yet from the customer's point of view, everything appears to be perfectly in place. Minimal, definitely. Viable, well, this time it's not even up for discussion. Definitely viable. Real customers, real money changing hands, real shoes being shipped. Premeditated, I suppose. Zappos went on to do quite well. They were acquired by Amazon in 2009 for a cool $1.2 billion. Buffer, Dropbox, and Zappos, 3 of my favorite MVPs. What do you think of my choices? Any you disagree with? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd also like to hear about your favorites. Let me know in the comments, and I'll feature the best ones in a future episode.
So just going back to the message that we were sharing with you, now you are in this position where you can very easily do your MVP, because you saw 3 very different examples. One was just a very simple slideshow, the other one a video, And the third one was a very functional solution that it was a very smart one and not very technical. So go back to your prototype, see how you can improve from there, and test an MVP and bring us the data. Thank you all.